Okay, it says we're live, so we must be live. Hello and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. And hi to Dick, who is already there, ready and waiting. Let me just adjust my horns, which sounds wrong. Yeah, lots of stuff today. It is here. 11 degrees, which isn't too bad, but it's been raining for 3 days. And it's going to rain tomorrow. So I was going to do the last of my walks, which I've put on the other channel, where I'm walking from the Upfield train line into Melbourne. Can't do the last one because it's been raining. So instead, I've been doing this, cleaning up the man cave. There's actually a lot less junk behind me in spite of what it looks like than there has been before. So everybody, time for a weather report. Tell me where you are and what you are doing. Yep, Peter's here. Hi, Peter. And also what the weather is. I need to know what the weather is where you are because I do. I've got lots of things. I've actually made a list, which is kind of cool. And there's a few things on that list. 7 people, 2 thumbs up so far. Sunny today in Dover, says Dick. And obviously he can hear me, so there's that. Yeah, the weird thing about cleaning up the man cave, and I have done some cleanup in spite of what appearances are, is finding stuff you forgot you had. Like things like, and I'll just give you one example. Weather is picture perfect here in Connecticut, says For So High. Patrick's here. I've got a baby cinema, my little tiny cinema. So I forgot that was on the shelf. Got lots of weird and wonderful things. I won't do them now, but yeah, lots and lots of good stuff. Got my quilted jumper on, and yeah, it is raining quite heavily here at the moment. So that's happening. And I really can't do the walk because the camera I use is like $1,000 camera. And if it gets wet, it's going to glitch and break down. So I can't do the walk. Peter says, grey skies and birdsong, rain and hot crumpets. Hi, Film Nut. Cannot wait for our discussion on Sunday on topic of censorship of one particular film. Yeah, there has been censorship on a 4K release of a film. So I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But if you got the Blu Ray of this film, you might want to keep it. Hi, Dilly. Cooler place than it was earlier. Cool. You got to have a moderation, I think. Hi, Damon. It's raining in Perth, and I'm still in a warm bed. Well, that's good. That's always a plus. But for me, I don't tend to watch YouTube in bed. That's just me. I don't watch TV. We don't have a TV in the bedroom. That's like a quiet place. Occasionally, I'll look at a screen, or I've got a smart speaker, so I'll listen to something. And I do white noise overnight for that. But no, just not my thing. By the way, I've got to remind everyone, SuperChats get the fart gun. I did see Kmart, or was it Kmart? No, Big W have an updated fart gun from the Minions movies. And this fart gun shoots smoke rings. I can't afford it. And it also does smelly fart smell. So if anybody wants to send me an updated fart gun, I'm happy to accept that, but it's out of the budget right now. But I am so hanging out to do this, the end of this walk I'm doing, because I'm going a bit stir crazy in the house. Sal's taking me out for brunch after I do the live stream. So we've got that, but I'm getting a bit stir crazy. I want to travel. And even if it is just a walk 4 kilometers towards the city, I've got my mojo up for doing that. The fart gun arms race is on, says Dealer. Yep, it is indeed. And I like that. I am tempted, to be honest with you, to get the fart gun. But we'll see. It's just not in the budget at the moment. I've got other things I've got to take care of before I take care of fart guns. And this one still works. You're not going to find out until and unless somebody does a super chat, but it does work. Yeah, lots of stuff. I'm not sure whether I think I mentioned on the channel before, but New Wave releasing put out this movie and I watched it. This is arguably the sickest movie I've seen this year so far, and I've seen a few sick movies. Visitor Q, a Japanese movie from 2000 by Takashi Miike. This is a messed up movie, but it's messed up in a really interesting way. I'm looking forward to rewatching this one. It's it's very, very messed up. I don't know whether any of you have seen it, but Visitor Q, if you're a sick bastard like me, you're going to enjoy it in a way. Morning, Deb. How are things in Nipaluna? Phil Nutt says it sure is messed up. Played on the eclipse on the 25th. Cool. Yeah. I mean, you got to be in a certain headspace to watch movies like that. It's like the new French extremity movies. You got to be in a headspace to watch them. They can mess you up badly if you're not. Yeah, middle-aged geek girl's in the other room. She's not on the stream, but she's in the other room. And in spirit, she's here as well with her pillow. Yep. Film Nut says, love catching up with you when we saw None in Rope. We had a great time that night. I didn't kick on with the other people afterwards because I had to get home and do stuff. But yeah, it was great fun just hanging out and talking movies and shooting the shit with everyone. None in Rope was an interesting film. Apparently, one of the people who did the noise ensemble before the movie walked out seeing None in Rope because it wasn't their kind of movie. That's fine. But somebody who makes electronic noise as their side hustle, this guy just left because a Japanese piku film about bondage just wasn't his jam. I'm not sure what he expected based on the title, but he just lit out. But it was great. It was sold out. Really interesting time to be had there. Yeah, he did. The guy, as film that says, the guy really fucked off. And I haven't seen that happen in a movie for a long time. People walking out of a film because it's a little too much for them. Maybe it's because I've been going to see fairly mainstream movies in the cinema. But you got to know you're doing something either very right or very wrong when somebody just lights out and goes, no, this ain't for me. Boom, out the door. Deb says the weather's very mild in Nipaluna, Hobart, 7.5 degrees C. Yep. I mean, we got 11 because there's a lot of cloud cover. But it's going to be raining for the rest of the day, and it's going to be raining tomorrow. So I'm probably going to have to jam the video I'm doing to finish my walk, get that done on Wednesday, and release it on Thursday, if possible. I wasn't expecting the weather to turn shit because for all of the other 4 sections of the walk, walking down the upfield train line, the weather stayed pretty good. There was overcast the first day, but after that, it was sunny and not terribly, terribly cold. But for this last one, it just doesn't want me to do it. D. Lee says, None in Rope sounds like a hitherto unknown Ken Russell film. It is so not that. It's got some good landscapes in it. Set in rural Japan, it's got some really nice landscapes in it. And it's got some really attractive women and some really well-made ropes. But yeah, warning: if it's not your jam, definitely don't watch None in Rope. Yeah, it's definitely not a Ken Russell film. But you're not going to embrace movies like that. My kind of film development as a film buff was, for the most part, apart from childhood stuff, where I went to Saturday matinees and things like that, was watching 1970s exploitation films in cinemas, because there was this weird economic thing where for the 2 or 3 decades after TV came in, cinemas slowly declined. And the big cinemas in Sydney City, which were grand theatre palaces, they were really good-looking cinemas. The Capitol, the State, both of which have survived, the Rapallo, all of the other ones were not particularly viable. So what the companies who own them did, Hoyts usually did, was they chucked a lot of exploitation from them. So you got this grand palace, and after the live stream, check out the State Theatre in Sydney. It is the grandest cinema you're ever going to see in your life, and they're showing things like the Ginger trilogy and the Wicker Man, and lots of softcore adult films in the 1970s in those cinemas. Some very sick stuff, and that's the kind of stuff I developed as a film buff watching. So watching None in Ropel was duck soup for me. I didn't find it particularly transgressive because the movies I'd watched in my developing years as a film buff were 1970s exploitation movies, which were full on. Yeah, it is. It's an incredibly beautiful cinema. The Capitol was as well, and the Capitol was showing Hammer and Amicus movies for a while, and they were both the grandest cinemas in Sydney, and they couldn't get people to go there unless they showed exploitation films. And you go there in a daytime session, and there were like 10 people in the audience, 9 of whom had jackets in their laps. Hi, Franny, how you doing? Very disappointed. What are you disappointed by? Because I watched None in Ropel. Dodge Morgan says, recently rewatched Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1 with nuns drowning rabbis. Does that count as an exploitation movie? That counts as satire. It's a satire of 1950s Esther Williams movies as much as anything. And of Busby Berkeley movies, amongst other things. No. Mel Brooks has got a right to do things. He's one of the few surviving comedians who actually fought Nazis. He gets a pass on this stuff. But so basically I got corrupted watching cinema very early. And while I'm very much aware of issues of consent and things like that in movies now, I can still watch Girls Are for Loving or the Ginger Trilogy, the other two movies in the Ginger Trilogy, and other films like that, and accept them at the level they are. Okay, Friday says, disappointed about the DVD that's broken. See the earlier comment. Sorry, I missed your comment. I apologize for that. Let's see. I'm scrolling down. The comment, for some reason, didn't come through by the look of things, which is kind of messed up. I'm not sure what's happened there, because I'm usually pretty good with following the chat. Yeah, Friday, the comment didn't come through. Which DVD got broken? I'm not sure what happened there, but the comment didn't come through. What we have here is failure to communicate. Damon says, cinema is amazing. Well, yeah, it is. And I wouldn't, one of the things I'd do if I time travel would be go back and hang out in those cinemas. Peter says, as a metalhead, naughty nuns in song videos have long been part of my life. Yeah, I can empathize about the naughty nuns, but I've never been a metalhead. I'm more like 40s jazz. That's more my jam. But the rain stopped. I can't hear the rain on the roof anymore. But yeah, getting through the man cave and cleaning up the man cave is a big job, because there's a quarter of a century of stuff accumulated in here. All the detritus of the late 20th and early 21st century culture has just washed up here into a min, and I've got to go through it and get rid of some stuff, to be honest with you. And I'm doing that. I've got 3 large boxes full of stuff already. I've got a box of e-waste. I've also got a box of small toys and tchotchkes and things like that I'm getting rid of as well. So that's what I've been mostly doing is trying to get things organized and actually trying to work out, yes, I want to keep all this stuff, but where am I going to put it? Which is the other dilemma I've got here in the man cave. Forsyth says, we have 4 single-screen cinemas here in Norwalk decades ago. The Empress, the Rialto, the Norwalk, and the Palace all gone now. Yeah, absolutely. We've only got one left in Melbourne, which is the Astor, which I go to fairly regularly. Friday says, based on the Konyo Dragon Onsen zombie versus strippers, evidently. I'm censoring in case that's a problem. Don't censor on this. Don't censor on the stream. It really is okay, Friday. If anybody says anything unkind, I can always cut that comment. But apart from that, feel free to say what you got to say on the chat. Unless YouTube's censoring without telling me, which I'd have an issue with. And that leads me into, there was on one YouTube channel, and they actually demonstrated this. Hi, Dogstat, how you doing? There's a 4K that's been put out with a line of dialogue censored on the 4K release, but it's on the Blu Ray release that came out years ago. And that movie's Pleasantville, with Reese Witherspoon and Tobey Maguire. Interesting film. Joan Allen's in it as well. But when the 4K came out in the last month or so, and it has been released here in Australia because I've seen it at JB Hi-Fi, there's a line of dialogue which has been cut out of it. And again, it's the enshittification of things. And I don't like the fact that it's happening on physical media. One of the arguments we have for retaining physical media is that it can't be enshittified once it's been released. You've got it there. George Lucas isn't going to fuck around with it again, or anybody else isn't going to fuck around with it again. But Pleasantville has been censored. And it's at the 108-minute point in the movie. And Reese Witherspoon's character is talking to her brother, played by Tobey Maguire. And the line of dialogue that's been cut out of it is, I did the slut thing, David, got kind of old. That got cut out of the movie on the 4K release, which I don't know why. It's really ick that it got cut out, because it is part of that character's arc in the movie. And cutting it out just seems somebody gatekeeping morality in a very screwed up way. Okay, I've got that, Franny. Thank you. Deb says, we're really lucky to have the State in North Hobart. Beautiful old cinema, 100 plus years. Yeah, I've actually been to the State in North Hobart. I saw the Branner Murder on the Orient Express there on the same day that marriage equality got passed. So I do like it. Beautiful old cinema, not incredibly large, but a beautiful old cinema, and I really appreciate beautiful old cinemas. Yeah, Franny loves Pleasantville's Heresy the Censored. Yeah, but they did. So what I'm going to have to do is try to, I haven't got the movie. Going to have to try to find the Blu-ray, because I'm definitely not getting the 4K. And that enshittification is A, unnecessary, and B, quite rude. If you're paying for the movie, you're paying for the movie. You're not paying for somebody else's version of the movie with stuff cut out because their auntie got the vapors about it. Yeah, Peter says enshittification must stop, and there's more and more enshittification as time goes on. And that really is something that just doesn't need to happen. So that's Pleasantville. If you've got the 4K, caveat emptor, but I'm not getting the 4K of that. If I see a Blu-ray or a DVD around, I'll pick it up because I do like the movie. I think it's got a lot to say. But even though it is mere seconds out of the movie, you got to draw a line in the sand somewhere, and that's where I'm drawing the line. Yeah, the distributors can get the 4K out of here with that nonsense, yeah. And Damien says, when I lived in New Zealand, it had many old cinemas. Then while doing the research, I found all those cinemas were pulled down in the late 70s. Yeah, a lot of the great old cinemas in Sydney were as well. I mean, there was the Forum, there was the Rapallo, there was the Town, which for a long time showed um, R-rated movies. Just so many of them. The Lyceum, the Paris, the Mayfair, just tons and tons of old cinemas. Dog's Dad says, it really fries me when the current flavour of the week censors films. How would anyone feel if a classic like Casablanca was butchered? There was talk of colorizing Casablanca back in the 90s when Ted Turner had that technology. And there was a resounding fuck no to that. Dodge Morgan says, I've been buying up old TV comedy boxes because watching them on TV, lots of words and phrases no longer accepted, but now doing it on physical media, that's not on. No, it isn't. And yeah, it just seems so pointless and so short-term thinking. And I think just because you've got the rights to a movie, it doesn't mean you, in the truest sense, own the film. Guillermo del Toro said that if you own a physical copy of a movie, you become the custodian of that film. You become the librarian of that film. You become the person who holds that film. And I think that's true. We really don't need to have people cutting out lines of dialogue that are a little inconvenient to their worldview. I mean, I'm going to be on the Imprint podcast. We're doing the 100th episode of the Imprint cast next weekend. And we're going to be covering Midnight Cowboy, which I'm looking forward to doing. I've got to watch it again this week. So we're doing Midnight Cowboy for the 100th episode. They've asked me to be on there. Great. And one of the things I found out is that Midnight Cowboy, when it came out here in Australia, back in the 1969, I think it was a censored version of it. And it was only 5 years later that the Academy Twin in Paddington, Sydney, was able to show the uncensored version. They had to wait until after the Whitlam government came in, the Labor government came in, and they eased up on censorship. And they were able to show an uncut version of Midnight Cowboy in the cinema. And it was re-released to cinemas at that time so people could see the full movie. I'd be kind of low-key interested to see what they cut out. Maybe the blowjob in the cinema scene got cut out. I don't know. But a movie as important as Midnight Cowboy getting censored. This thing's fairly old. People have been doing this for a very long time. And I think it's about time they stopped. D. Lee says, a line from Casablanca, from Gremlins 2, Casablanca now in colour with a much happier ending. Yeah, it's like The Wicker Man. If you're a pagan, it does have a happy ending. Damien says, films and TV shows these days are cut. Yeah, they are. Dog State says, but back on the other hand, some of the dialogue in Blazing Saddles is absolutely hilarious and cringeworthy. But don't bastardize it with someone's version of their morality. And you've got to remember, too, with Blazing Saddles, Richard Pryor was one of the screenwriters. And if they use the N-word in that, that's Richard Pryor using the N-word. It's not necessarily the characters. And also they're using the N-word in a way that makes racists look like morons. So there's a reason to use it in that context as a satire, and also to point out that racists are morons. Forsale says, I saw Midnight Cowboy in Manhattan in 1969. It was shocking for its time. Yeah, it was. And, excuse me, and I'm really looking forward to rewatching it. I'm not particularly a fan of John Voight because at the moment his politics suck. But the arc of Joe Buck as a character is interesting. I'm going to save the rest of that for when I do the Imprint cast. But I'm looking forward to doing that, and I'm kind of grateful, or very grateful, that they asked me to be on the 100th episode. Yeah, Friday says, people are the common clay, morons. Absolutely. Yep. Kayan says the dog in the Dam Busters is now called Nigel. Well, I don't know about that. Um, I'm tempted to do a trivia quiz where all the answers are things you can't say. Like, what was the name of the dog in Dam Busters? And don't put it in the chat because I'm going to have to ban you. But it's there. It's in my Blu Ray of the Dam Busters. And yes, it's totally 100% cringe and should not have been there. But it does show that we've made some, at least nominal, progress since that movie came out in, I think, 1956. Damien says, I saw Midnight Cowboy on TV, then later got a VHS copy. Found a copy of the book in my local news agents with a film cover. Cool. Friday says, don't mention H.P. Lovecraft's cat's name. Well, it's okay, the cat's dead now. Hi, Stephen. Just discovered you're on live. My wife, Kif, says hi, and I do too. Hi, Steve, and hi to Kif too. Yeah, but yeah, absolutely. Lovecraft was a massive racist and pretty fucked up person in general. D. Lee says, I understand that Mel Brooks wasn't comfortable with the number of uses of the N-word in Blazing Saddles, but Pryor insisted. Yeah, I think Pryor had a point, and that point, of course, being that racists are morons, and the way that they're positioned in the movie shows them to be as thick as a brick. But that's the nice thing about, I think, a writer's room where you've got diversity. Some people will push for certain things because of their lived experience of them. And I think that's what Pryor did in Blazing Saddles. Kif waves from halfway around the world. That's got to hurt your arm to do it from that far away. But I appreciate it, Steve. Yeah, so there's that. And here's my question. And I've got an answer. I know the answer to this. I'm going to tell you the answer to this after we get a bit of a vox pop. What's the worst MCU movie? That's the question. Just going to change hats. This one's getting hot for some reason. So in order to hide my male pattern baldness, I'm putting on a hat. There we go. Also blocks the light a little bit for me. My grandmother had a black Labrador called Nigel, says Deb. Yeah, that's very Tasmanian, isn't it? Forsyth says, I read a collection of the letters of H.P. Lovecraft. Definitely a racist. All of them. Yep, potatoes, moron. It's the same. Yeah, I think I'm glad that we don't do that anymore. I'm glad people get called out for it. I'm a bit disappointed. There are so many people who get cancelled because they use that term, and they still think it's a tough guy thing to use that term. I don't even do it when I sing Pusher Man. D. Lisa, so was Patricia Highsmith, a few writer people that were. Yeah. Steve says, I'd argue Lovecraft was a xenophobe, at least until he became a New Dealer near the end of his life. Yeah, people can change, and you hope that they get to be better people over the arc of their life. Does anyone know why Stephen Fry's Dam Busters movie never got off the ground? I think Peter Jackson was involved in that as well, and they just decided there wasn't. They probably crunched the numbers and found there wasn't enough interest in it to do another one. And I think that the original version stands pretty much, you don't need to remake this one. But yeah, Lovecraft definitely held despicable views for most of his life, says Steve. Deb says, it was very South Australian. It was in the 50s, apparently. I only saw photos of the dog. He looked nice. Yeah, people turning their dogs into, racist names. Dogstad says, how are my middle-aged geek girl and the cats? We're doing fine. The cats have been fed now. Sal fed the cats. She's got a new obsession. She's playing Subnautica 2 in the beta version, a game that she loves. And she's kind of obsessed with that at the moment. So she's doing Subnautica 2. But she's doing fine. Friday says to Forsyth, have you read the fictional book using Lovecraft as a character who was approached by the Nazis to write a book. There's a plot with U-boats and depth charges. That's kind of cool. Steve has read Stephen Fry's excellent book adaptation of the Odyssey right now. Recommended. Cool. Deb says, my grandmother was sadly an awful racist. So was my grandfather. In that era, a lot of people were. There's some weird shit. People told me when I was a little kid. It was interesting because I went over to dinner to an Italian kid's place in my neighborhood. We had dinner there. Good old-fashioned Italian food. And my mum was talking about it to a neighbor, talking over the fence kind of stuff. And the neighbor says, you shouldn't go to Italian people's houses. They poison children. And she genuinely believed that. There's so much fucking racist shit that got put into my head when I was a kid. I didn't believe it because as soon as I saw my first blaxploitation movie, that shit went out the window. But there was a lot of it out there at the time. And people got away with it because it wasn't questioned. Peter says, originally watched Kings Go Forth with Sinatra, Tony Curtis, and Natalie Wood. The N-word is used once as a weapon against racism. Okay. Franny says, Lovecraft's book by Richard A. Lupov has Lovecraft as a character. Yeah. Dogstead says, I had a thought experiment with a friend. If Night Gallery were rebooted, who would be the ideal host? I nominated Jack Black. Who can we get to be the ideal host? I know. The ideal host for a reboot of the Night Gallery, David Desmalchin. He's a big horror movie fan. He's written horror movie comic books. And he's got black fingernails. David Desmalchin would be the perfect guy to host a reboot of the Night Gallery. There's your answer. I'm sticking with that. Even better than Jack Black. Jack Black's got too much of a comedic persona, but David Desmalchin, perfect casting. Someone should give me money to cast people in movies. Deb was about to say Desmalchin too. Yep. Hey, Cinema Dave, how you doing? How are things in New Jersey? It is New Jersey, isn't it? Yeah, we're doing well. I'm going to go out to brunch after this. I've got 2 cans of Guinness in the fridge if I need it. Yeah, that's the weird thing. I was actually talking to Sal about this, and we're talking about people who drink a lot. And I've been watching a lot of travel YouTubers, and the English, specifically English travel YouTubers, drink a lot because pub culture is a big thing in England, particularly. But me, I've had a 6-pack of Guinness in the house for about a month now, and I've drunk 3 of them. And that's the only alcohol I've consumed, which is why I'm so sharp at this advanced age. Haven't burnt out the brain cells. But it's really weird looking at other cultures that seem, on face value, very similar to my culture. My culture tends to be me. And you find these really odd differences. Steve says, actually met Rod Serling when I was a kid during the run of Night Gallery. That's cool. Dave says it's hot here in the US. Yep. I can believe that. I'm looking forward to it. Hi, Mr. Alan Olson. How you doing? Dog's Dad says, I was just thinking of someone with overall name recognition. I think Black could pivot either way. Yeah, I think the persona will work against him because there's some very dark stuff in Night Gallery. And yeah, I mean, I've seen him do dramatic acting where he's good. But the comic persona, and he's doing another Jumanji movie with Dwayne Johnson at the moment. I think that will work against him. But Desmalchin, perfect casting. Steve says, not too hot in southeast Wisconsin, only 70 degrees Fahrenheit, but near 95% humidity because of rain today. Yeah, it does get very hot in the Midwest. I mean, I was in Minneapolis when it was 100 degrees and very humid back in 98. And we hit the wave pool. I went wave pool with somebody because I'd never been to a wave pool. They never got the waves big enough for me. I grew up going to the beaches in Sydney, and the bigger the waves, the better when you're body surfing. Damien says, only drink white wine or Guinness. Hopefully not at the same time. Yeah. Where's my cup of special coffee, says Dog's Dad? I've had 2 so far. There's the empty cup. I'm saving the 3rd one for breakfast. When I go out to brunch with Sal, I'm going to have a coffee down at Sons of Manor, our local cafe that we like a lot. We've got weird names for our local cafes. We've got Morrison Heath. We've got Grindstone. We've got Notorious. And we've got Sons of Manor. But we're going to go down there. Uncle Patrick says, my family finally watched Project Hail Mary. We enjoyed it. One of my daughters found an issue with the science. Yeah, cool. And that's part of the fun of science fiction movies, is picking the science apart. And when they screw it up, just enjoying the fact that they screw it up and that you've got a little more knowledge than the screenwriters do. That's always fun. Portland, Oregon is sunny, says Mr. Alan Olsen. Cool. I went through Portland on a train once. It looked nice, but I didn't get a chance to get off the train there. Damien says, I'm only a social drinker. Yeah, I drink very, very little. I mean, and I'll only ever drink one drink at a time. I drink for taste. So in the summer, I might have a gin and tonic or an Aperol Spritz. But getting drunk isn't something I enjoy particularly. There's a lot of family stuff to do with that as well. Friday says, also love H.P. Haycraft in Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, voiced by Jeffrey Combs. He appeared in an episode with Harlan Ellison, voiced by Harlan Ellison. Mystery Incorporated is a brilliant show. I'll keep that in mind, Friday. Thank you. Steve says, earlier today we watched the Region B Silent Star from a DIFA set. Great print transfer. Like seeing the film for the first time versus ever seeing First Spaceship and Venus in the theatre. I think I've got that DIFA box set and I reviewed it. Just dredging out those DIFA movies and just going, wow, they did some cool stuff. They're doing a couple of fantasy releases of DIFA. I haven't got them, and I'm not sure the budget extends to that. But they look kind of cool. Dog's Dad says, I recently watched one of the old videos about techno thrillers in the 60s. What are your recommendations from this era, apart from those ones? I mean, I like the Satan Bug. I like Colossus the Foreman Project. Those ones are pretty much the go-tos there. Deb says, I do like a nice port in winter evening with a casual glass of wine, but I spent years in pubs playing music and watching other folks get drunk. It put me off drinking too much. Yeah, Jeffrey Combs is interesting. Peter loves Aperol. Yeah, Aperol's good. Hot summer day, Aperol Spritz. Got to love that. Steve says, did I miss a part of Real Villains in Movies in 4K censorship? Yeah, there's a lot of dialogue that's been edited out of Pleasantville on 4K. You can go back and watch that part if you like to. But Real Villains in Movies. What is the worst MCU movie? That's the question, because it leads into me talking about real villains in movies. Dogstad says, techno thrillers for today. I think there's a lot of AI fear-mongering and things like that in techno thrillers for today. But people are extrapolating into the future and doing this type of stuff. I've got a video I'm working on of the 10 most cliched science fiction subgenres. And I'm going to talk about that in that video. Kayan says, what about the Andromeda Strain as a techno thriller? The Andromeda Strain shits the bed at the end. It's got such a Deus Ex Machina ending. I don't really like it for that reason. Real villains in the MCU, the Hydra folk pretending to work for common people. It's just like MAGA Republicans. Yeah, but they don't even pretend not to be like Hydra, don't they? Four-Star says, Wolverine versus Deadpool. I walked out in 5 minutes, got a refund. I enjoyed it. Or The Chosen from 1974, says KN. Yeah. According to my science educated partner, there was a number of issues with the science in Project Hail Mary. Yeah, you just got to go for the ride sometimes. I haven't rewatched it, but I could do. But I'm getting distracted by Baby Goose's hairpiece. Okay, I'm going to tell you the worst MCU movie. We've kind of worn that one out. Worst MCU movie is Iron Man 2. And I'm going to tell you why. And it rolls into real life villains in movies. Iron Man 2 has cameos by not only Larry Ellison, who runs Oracle, who is a right-wing nutjob crazy person whose son David is doing that Paramount Skydance acquisition of Warner Brothers at the moment. They're both fucking morons. And Ellison's in there in a cameo walking past Tony Stark. And it's also got Elon Musk doing a cameo talking about electronic aeroplanes and sucking up to Tony Stark in the most obsequious moment in the MCU. So Iron Man 2 has 2 real-life supervillains as cameo minor characters in the movie. And Larry Ellison in particular, he owns 98% of one of the, I think, the 8th biggest island in Hawaii. He owns 98% of it because he's a rich bastard. So real-life villains in movies do appear. And in this case, it's Larry Ellison and Elon Musk. Black Widow's the worst time movie. This is funny. Bad Guys, says Dog's Dad in the MCU. The Suits at Disney. Thor Love and Thunder is the worst MCU. I think Thor Love and Thunder is the most self-indulgent MCU movie. Taika Waititi thinking he's so clever. It's the least of the MCU movies, but the worst still Iron Man 2 with those cameos. Steve says those guys would be worth cutting from the HD versions of the film. No, leave them in there. You've got to own your mistakes. I've watched it this year. I watched Iron Man 2. And it hadn't occurred to me that Larry Ellison's in there, but he is. And Tony Stark says the Oracle of Oracle. But we've since learned that both Musk and Larry Ellison are worse than Tony Stark ever was. Deb says, as an MCU scholar, I'm interested in this. I find my final thesis as a comparative analysis of 4 MCU villains. Cool. Forsar says, reason enough to dislike a movie. I don't dislike the movie. I think it's got positive aspects. It's just that, you're biting into a chocolate cake and suddenly there's a rock in it. It's got that feel about it when those two appear. Friday says, Thor Love and Thunder is perfect once you realize the story is being told by Korg, who is an unreliable narrator. I think it's self-indulgent. I think Taika Waititi being a smarty pants. It's they let him get away with it because he'd done some really successful movies. And I don't even think, having everybody's kid in the movie as well. It's very, very self-indulgent. Steve says, yeah, I agree. As much as I'd like to cut Trump a cameo out of any film too, got to be true to history. You do. And, Home Alone 2 with Trump in it, things like that. You got to let that sit. And you got to go, yeah, people will suck up to rich people. And people will indulge rich people when maybe they shouldn't. Maybe things like, I think it's Gremlins 2, where they have a character that is almost pastiching Trump. That shit we need to do. Kayan says, I find the MCU movies deeply irritating on every level. No, I'm kind of okay with it. I really enjoyed the Spider-Man movie. I'm looking forward to the stuff coming up. I'm fully welded on, but I'm aware that they're not perfect. But I'm fascinated with doing this storytelling as a mosaic of various different parts in various different genres. I think it's an incredibly bold thing to do. And nobody's ever done it before. Nobody's ever done a storytelling block as complex and diverse as the MCU. And yes, it isn't always successful. And I don't think it's realistic to expect it to always be successful. But it's unprecedented. And as a Marvel Comics fan from way, way back, from about 1966, I'm good with that. Mr. Alan Olsen says he plays a villain in Free Guy. Yeah, he does. But Twine, behind every fortune is a great crime, says Steve. Yeah. Gremlins 2 is based on Trump veered off during filming. Yeah, there's always that thing. Deb says, I agree with your analysis on real-world basis. Ellison and Musk are poisonous. They are. Dogstad says, when will the MCU finally burn out? I don't know that it will. I think particularly Kevin Feige is incredibly smart and incredibly good at recognizing when the MCU goes in an unsuccessful direction and pulling it back. I think that's one of his talents. And I'm looking forward to Avengers Doomsday. We're looking forward to Black Panther 3 because David Johnson, who's playing the son of T'Challa, is one of the great up-and-coming actors. He is fantastic. He was fantastic in The Long Walk. He was fantastic in Alien, whatever it was. Really incredibly nuanced and powerful actor. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with the son of T'Challa. I'm good with that. I'm fine with it. I'm enjoying X-Men 97, the animated X-Men thing that's currently up on Disney+, which does a lot with animation and basically does some incredible character work as much as it does action. Kane says, some of the actions are like looking in the glass door of a washing machine. I think they got better at not doing that. If the latest Spider-Man movie has incredibly kinetic actions, but one of the things Destin Daniel Cretton does is when there's a possibility of the action getting a little too jumbled and a little too jangly, he filmed a lot of stuff at 420 frames a second, so he can slow it down realistically and show you the important beats in the thing. And it works when he does that. I think it's a very, very smart way of essaying the action. D. Lee says, if we're going for real-life unpleasant people in TV superhero shows, yeah, no, Alison Mackey was in Smallville, became part of a sex cult. Yeah, that's a minor issue. Franny says, She-Hulk was brilliant, but I don't think we'll get more because the incels don't like it. They got Starfleet Academy again, both of which I enjoyed. I enjoyed She-Hulk. I enjoyed Starfleet Academy. I'm enjoying Strange New Worlds, which just did an episode parodying the Hangover movies, and it just did a horror episode before that. I think Strange New Worlds is like shooting for the moon in the last seasons, and I like that, and I like the ensemble as well. I think Captain Pike's one of the best Starfleet captains. Deb says, I love the new Spider-Man movie. Lots of fun. It is. And I think it's got heart too. It does everything right. Steve says, I wonder how much of that Ant-Man was bad because of the Kang troubles, because they didn't want to recast. Really came out a mess. I think they're addressing the Kang thing in Doomsday. And somebody pointed this out to me as well, which is kind of interesting. Avengers Doomsday is coming out on the same day as June 3. So they're looking at doing a Barbenheimer with it called Junesday, where you go and see Avengers Doomsday, and then you go and see June 3 on the same day. I think it may be a little forced, but I might well do that. I might go for that. It might be a fun video to do. Steve says, we liked She-Hulk 2. I have an Avengers t-shirt. Dog's dad says, talking about old IP, I'm not shedding any tears about Star Trek taking a well-deserved break. The Academy series was dreadful. We can agree to disagree on that. I kind of liked it. I like the fact that it's trying something new. And I think that's always a positive, whether it's successful or not. And yeah, if you try something new, there's always that possibility of totally screwing it. But I think it's always a good thing to try. Friday says, the horror episode surprised me with how graphic it was, and it worked. The beats were right. And the, not pat close on the ending is kind of cool as well. Steve says, Pike is the captain I'd follow after Kirk, both making good moral decisions. I'd rather Pike than Kirk. I think Kirk has an ego and is not aware of his ego. Kirk, as played by Shatner at least. But Anson Mount playing Pike, any captain that invites you to dinner and then cooks for you, I'm there for that. Evan June, no, I think Doomsday is probably the way to go. Friday says, I like Pike better than any other captain. Yeah, I think it's good. Forsale says, She-Hulk as drawn by John Byrne was one of the best titles Marvel ever published. And it did break out. Again, that's another thing where somebody took a chance on something and it paid off. Deb says, my partner and I both have December birthdays. We're planning to do a Doomsday if we can. Yeah, why not? Just go for it. Have fun. Enjoy yourself. Indulge. Deb says She-Hulk was great. Doomsday, yeah. See? Problem is, I don't know whether they're both coming out on the same day in Australia. I think it'd be stupid not to. But I want to see them both. And I want to see them both in a good cinema. Dogstat says, I will agree with Strange New Worlds carries the traditional canon, though it's getting a bit strange. Too bad it's been retired. Yeah. I think the ensemble works. And the last episode has number one played by Rebecca Romaine doing karaoke, singing Total Eclipse of the Heart in Klingon. Now that's great. I love that. Don't like karaoke, but the idea of somebody singing Total Eclipse of the Heart in Klingon, I'm there for that. It's got that right combination of wow and silly. Steve says, my wife thinks that movies are a weaker part in the US, but could have changed. Hoping to see Spidey tomorrow. I think you'll enjoy it. Yep, Tuesday is tomorrow. You guys are just a little retarded in the timeline. But, yeah, Strange New Worlds, I think, is better than people think it is when they've only seen one episode. I think that ensemble really works. And everybody commits to the bit. 15 Klingon power ballads in a row. What language would you use for, like, yacht rock? Yeah, what language would you use? Maybe Vulcan? No, not Vulcan. Not sure. But yeah, Strange New Worlds is really just going gonzo in the last couple of seasons. I think I've got two of them back to back. But yeah, I'm looking forward to more episodes of that. What else are we watching? Watch X-Men 97, which I like. Second season. The other thing, got more news. Let me just check something up. Star Wars, you know that I don't like Star Wars, and that's fine. We'll just leave that sitting where it is. It's getting a dub in Welsh, which is kind of cool. I would actually watch it again if I could see the Welsh version of Star Wars. Matthew Rhys and Rhys Ifans are doing parts of the dub. And I think that's kind of cool. Dogstad says, okay, we're all going to see Doomsday. What should we be looking for in the interim? Let's see. Maybe go back and rewatch a few things like Thunderbolts and maybe Fantastic Four First Steps and the last Captain America movie. I think that should do it. And that should get you up to speed. Cockney Star Wars is funny, says Friday. Pity they didn't have Bob Hoskins to do one of the voices. That would have been cool. Deb just checked. June and Doomsday are both scheduled for the 17th of December. Cool. Yeah, Steve says you should see Supergirl and the Odyssey if you haven't in between. Yeah, I mean, I've got to get the 4K of Supergirl. That's one of the things I'm going to fork out for a 4K on. And the Odyssey, yeah. If you want to see the Odyssey, what I'd suggest as a double feature with the Odyssey, and I know it's 3 hours long, but take a look at The Return with Ralph Fiennes and Juliette Binoche, which is the end of the Odyssey story where Odysseus comes back to Ithaca. I like that. I think it's a very grounded and gritty version of that part of the story. and it leaves out the gods, but I think it's well acted and well set, and I don't think one takes away from the other. If you see the Return and then you see the Odyssey, I think they're complementary. Steve says, love Fantastic Four First Steps, best Marvel movie in years. Yeah. I actually forked out for the 4K of that, even though it didn't get a physical media release in Australia. I waited for the price to drop a little bit on Amazon and hit that one. And I'm glad I've got a copy of it too. Hi, Adam. Do I think the launch of GTA 6 will affect cinema ticket sales? No. The shut-ins will play GTA 6. But, yeah, I mean, GTA 6 will probably make more money than either of those movies, because a release like GTA 6 makes a couple of $1 billion in sales on first day. But there's nothing to say when you get a hand cramp, you're not going to go and watch a movie. D-Lee says, I prefer Supergirl to Spider-Man. I'm probably in a minority there. I think you can like both. I'd like both of them. I enjoy both of them. And, yeah, I can watch serious movies, but also I'm a superhero guy. Steve says, surprised but not really at how much hate Supergirl is aimed at. Stupid, sexist, yeah. And I think Millie Alcock's fantastic. She does a really good job in the movie. That's one of the reasons why I want to get the physical copy of it. I do have Superman on 4K. And I'm going to get Supergirl on 4K as well. Got to support local actors. Mr. Allen also says, in Portland, we do a karaoke while drinking hard alcohol. Almost got pitched from the venue for doing a death metal version of Are You Washed in the Blood of Jesus? Okay, why not? Superstition always confuses me, and religious belief always confuses me. So the fact that you did a transgressive version of it on karaoke, good on you. Steve says, when I was in TSR's in-house computer game department, the genius that shut it down said, there will never be any money in computer games. Yeah, that was a bold call to make, wasn't it? I mean, at the moment, I'm just playing 2 games, and I've been doing this for years. I'm playing Destiny 2, and I'm playing Skyrim. And they're more comfort than anything else. I'm not getting drilled into watching them. Every now and playing them. Every now and then I'll play a round of them just as an indulgence and have a bit of fun on this machine, because I like playing them on PC. I've got Skyrim and I've got Destiny 1 and 2 on physical copies for the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox. But the load screens take a lot longer than they do on my computer, where I've just got a Steam version of them. So I play it on the computer. See? Got a controller. But yeah, that's my computer gaming at the moment. Sal's doing Subnautica too. We're all having fun. Has Supergirl made any money or a financial flop? I think it's broken even, just. But I like it, and I liked it, and I will continue to like it. Deb says, I preferred Supergirl to Superman. I love the female representation of Spider-Man, a very grown-up MJ. Yeah, she's the voice of wisdom in that movie. Steve says, one of the guys in the department with me at TSR was the lead designer on Skyrim. Deep irony, yeah. Adam says, must have spent 300 hours in Skyrim. Good times. I think I've done more. Maybe I should bring up my Steam and just see how much Skyrim I've played. I'll do that now because I'm indulging myself here. Let's see, where is my Steam? Okay, library. Let's have a look at the library. Skyrim. You're going to like this. I played slightly less than 2,000 hours on Skyrim. I'm like 1,932 hours into Skyrim. Franny says Supergirl's really good fun and a good look at the character. Absolutely. And Steve likes Supergirl a lot as well. Watch the 80s version afterwards, and even worse than my comparison. My comparison, yeah, it is. Deb still cranks up Fallout Las Vegas and Oblivion occasionally. Alan says, haven't seen Supergirl due to health problems. Sorry about that, Alan. I think when you can, and when it's probably online or on streaming or something, it's worth seeing. Forsale says, Supergirl is the best DC superhero movie. Okay. I do like Supergirl. I think it's an honest film, and it's fun. And I want to see it again when I get the 4K. And just sit on the couch with Jill, our older cat. Friday says, so much time spent on Morrowind. Adam says, I must have ransacked all the quests in Skyrim. Yeah, I've also played a lot of DLC, a lot of downloadable content. I haven't gone into some of the mod stuff from independent modding, but Skyrim was just so flexible. I can go in, add an extra authorized mod and just play a bit of that. So I'm doing that. I tried playing with a sword wielding character last time, but I'm more like a sniper with a crossbow. I like playing that. So I do a lot of that kind of stuff. Let's see what I also got on the list here. Has anyone seen the trailer for Clayface, a DC body horror movie that's coming out with Tom Rhys-Harris in it? I'm kind of okay with that. I want to see that. I like the idea that under James Gunn, DC is diversifying the genre a bit. And yes, they've got things like the Batman, and the second movie with Robert Pattinson as Batman's coming out. I like the first one. I'm going to see that one too. But Clayface looks interesting from a body horror point of view. Ferroni says, looking forward to Wicca. Wicca looks like fun. Olivia Colman looks like she's having a lot of fun in that movie. Yeah, Clayface trailer was interesting, says Patrick. It was. And I do like that diversity. I think if DC is going to prevail, they do need to do a bunch of different genres, because the DC intellectual property is diverse. There are supernatural characters. There are horror characters in DC, just as there are in Marvel. And doing a bit of that, they've done it with Creature Commandos, the animated series as well. Doing a bit more of that is a smart move, bringing more audience from horror. Adam says, have I seen the new Krieger Resident Evil? Looks good. I've heard mixed things about it, but I haven't seen it. Steve says, Olivia Colman is a world treasure. Yeah, she uses the C word a lot, so I love her. Deb says, I want to see it too. Actually looks like a proper body horror. The IKEA advert is pure genius. Yeah, Olivia Colman is underrated. I mean, she won an Oscar and it totally blew her mind. But yeah, I'm kind of there's a lot of good, interesting stuff coming up. One of the things Larry Ellison's son, David, and getting back to supervillains, David Ellison, who runs Skydance, and is it Warner Brothers yet? No, it's Skydance Paramount. He's running that, and he's an unsuccessful actor. He was trying to be an actor, wasn't very good at it. And then his father says, run the studio, because of course he does. One of the things he's doing with Paramount, which is, I think, stupid, but then the sons of billionaires are very often stupid. He's only greenlighting action movies and horror movies for the studio. That's his go-to to greenlight. Yes, horror movies do make money. They're a good investment. But to limit your studio to only making horror movies and action films is pretty bloody stupid. I mean, the most interesting movies at the moment are much more than that. Steve says, no more US media mergers. Absolutely. And I mean, David Ellison's the reason why they're a bad idea too. You get one dickhead sitting at the top making all the decisions about what gets greenlit. And it weakens movies as a genre. I mean, yes, of course, releasing companies like A24 have done incredibly well with horror movies, but even they're starting to diversify a little bit. But yeah, that I mean, people like Kevin Feige, very smart guy, running Marvel and running it in spite of the interference that Disney often throws at it. He's doing a great job. But David Ellison is hopeless. He's the guy who put Barry Weiss in charge of CBS News. He's that guy. Steve says, I think there should be 100% wealth inheritance tax. Start everything equal. The other thing I've heard which makes sense is you get to keep the first $1 billion. After that, it's taxed. You can still buy all the yachts you want to. You can still buy chunks of Hawaii. You can still buy non-disclosure agreements with beautiful women you treat poorly, though I'm not in favor of that. But after the first $1 billion, you don't get to keep it. I like that idea a lot more. Peter says, I'm getting ads for Screaming Mimi from Imprint. I don't know anything about it. Has anyone seen it? Is it worth getting? Yeah, it's worth getting. I haven't seen those ads because I don't see what ads you're getting. But it's interesting they're linking my channel up to ads for Imprint because Imprint are sending me an enormous box of stuff this week. The next lot of stuff. And I'm going to be getting 2 or 3 videos out of that. But it's an interesting film. I saw it a long time ago. Kind of slightly high exploitation, but it is an interesting film. And at the price point of about 30 odd bucks. Or if you wait until it's a JB Hi-Fi sale, you get it for a lot less. It's worth picking up. Mr. Alan Olsen says a Spectre movie would be cool. Yeah, you'd have to get a good backstory to it, but yeah. Dodge Morgan says, love Marvel Comics' Tomb of Dracula. Werewolf by Night will be... Werewolf by Night was done as a one-off by Marvel. It's been done, and you can see it in black and white or in colour. They've actually done Werewolf by Night as a Halloween special 2 years ago. So you might want to check that one out. Steve says, the old 90% tax after a certain very high point makes a lot of sense. I agree. Deb says, by the way, I saw Camp Miasma yesterday. Really fun, very bloody love letter to teen slasher movies. Gillian Anderson is channeling Dolly Parton. Cool. I do want to see Camp Miasma. I've seen Jane Schomburn, is it? I've seen her previous movie. I saw the TV Glow. I think that's what it's called. And I enjoyed that, so I do want to see Camp Miasma. Dogstad says, not to diversify your financial portfolio, short-sighted and plain stupid. Son of Ellison. Not that bright. No, he's not. Steve says, even having $1 billion is too much. I'd rather have 1,000 millionaires. Yeah. Steve says the Werewolf by Night movie was great, neither colour or black and white. Yeah. It's like Spider Noir. I watched Spider Noir in colour. Don't think I need to watch it in black and white. Bronny says, no brains required to inherit. Yeah, I think someone should give me $1 billion. That's my thing. You know, Larry Ellison has $210 billion. Give me one of them, and I will do good things. I know a couple of cinema projects I put money into. I'd probably put a new suburb out this way and build it to an interesting spec, you know, like a 15-minute city kind of project. I piss it away fast. But if I had $1 billion, there are a couple of things I do which will change where I live for the better. I think that's the approach I'd take. Steve says, what's Spider Noir in black and white? Great stuff. Might try colour, but I don't see the need. Yeah, watch it in one or the other. You don't need to watch both. Steve says to Fran, not a lot of brains required to get rich either, just to have a love of money more than people. It's like Musk. Musk is stupid. and paranoid and racist as fuck. He's good at buying things other people are doing, but he's not creative one tiny bit. He can't tell a joke, just like Trump can't tell a joke. And there's not an ounce of compassion in him. He's scarily self-centered in the same way Trump is. Steve says, I've known some people rich by their own efforts, not ripping off others. People are needing $1 million just to retire, says Mr. Alan Olson. I didn't, but I am broke all the time. So there is that. I'm fortnight to fortnight. But yeah, maybe where you are, Alan, I mean, it's a different economic situation where you are, particularly as far as healthcare is concerned. Dogstad says, do you see a future in Spider-Man Noir? I watched a few episodes. The hook wasn't there in spite of Nick Cage in the lead. I think it's definitely a one-off, but it's kind of a cool one-off. I don't think it needs to extend the story, but there's enough body horror in that one that I really appreciated. Steve thinks they can do more Spider Noir, set it up well. Yeah, but whether Nick Cage wants to do it or whether the studio wants to make it is another issue. Though with the success of Brand New Day, they may well give it a go because they'll think that people want more Spider-Man. But that's not a bad thing, I don't think. There's an AI feature film coming out. I don't know what it's about. It looks like an action film. But there's some people touting an AI movie they've made, which looks horribly generic. I'd infinitely rather watch Jason Statham elbow someone in the head than watch an AI action film. And of course, Elon Musk wants to make an AI version of The Odyssey, which will be full of white people and will have no nuance. And only people like me will watch it so we can talk shit about it online. But maybe one of those projects, Elon Musk just blowing a fart bubble and expecting people to take it seriously. What amazes me at the moment, and I find this very fascinating, the worst people in the world are revealing themselves to be the worst people in the world. And they're not hiding behind a cloak of assumed virtue now. Trump and Musk and Ellison and all the other ones are unashamedly James Bond villains without the charisma. And I find that fascinating and horrifying at the same time. Yeah, Deb says, I really enjoyed Spider Noir, but I'm not sure if we need any more. Steve says, I'm okay if they don't continue Spider Noir, but I think they could if they wanted to. Mr. Alan Olson says, David Cronenberg needs to make a superhero movie. I don't think he's got the want to do that. I'm not sure he's a superhero movie fan. Maybe Brandon Cronenberg could do it because he's made a couple of good films so far. Finally says, Elon Musk project, North says, certainly will never happen. Yeah. Steve says, a lot of Dr. Dooms in the world, we really need real-world re-regions. They're not as charismatic as Dr. Doom. The thing is, they're the most bland and uninteresting people in the world, but they've got enough hangers-on who hang off their every word that they think they're a lot more charismatic than they are. They think they've got the riz, and they don't. It's just that people are looking to monetize them and to hang off their coattails because there is money in doing so. So the people who are sucking up to them are unreliable narrators. And people like Musk and Trump and the Ellisons and all those other people are in an echo chamber full of bullshit. And they expect the world to accept that. Gina Reinhardt here in Australia is the same thing. Richest person, richest woman in Australia. Somebody made a joke about her on a TV show, and she's asked for an apology and threatened to sue the ABC about it because somebody said that somebody should jam a stick up her and turn her into a sausage roll. she not only arced up about it herself, but she got her mining company to complain about it publicly as well. Because again, it's an echo chamber of people who are sucking up to rich people. It's just phenomenally stupid and phenomenally myopic the way billionaires operate. Forsell says, Mayor Mamdani in New York City is a beacon of light in the darkness. I agree. He's doing some really interesting and lateral thinking stuff that seems to be working. Dodge Morgan says, first Darkman film was a classic superhero horror film. Yeah, I like that one. I really enjoyed it. I should rewatch it too. They're blamed because greed and evil are banal. Absolutely, Steve. Mr. Alan Olsen, have I seen Cronenberg's latest Shrouds? Chef's Kiss No Note, says Deb. Haven't seen Shrouds. I should watch it. Steve says, Spider-Man had a lot of Cronenberg body horror moments. Yeah, it did, particularly during the World War I stuff. That was really, really well done. And that's the thing. I think one of the self-defeating things that's happening at the moment, a lot of people are saying they've got superhero fatigue. And I know people who say that, and I like them. I don't respect that opinion they have, but I like them as people. And they say I've got superhero fatigue. And then something like Spider Noir comes out with the body horror. And I know those people would really dig the body horror in Spider Noir. But because they've thrown out the baby with the bathwater and won't watch superhero movies, they're missing out on some stuff that would entertain them. And I find that kind of interesting, but again, self-defeating. There are a lot of people who, and also some people who like some serious character beats. Spider-Man Brand New Day has really interesting and grown-up character beats in it. It's also got John Bernthal playing the Punisher, so I'm there. But it does have those character beats, which are interesting. Dogstone says, I don't know how parents got through World War II with all the maniacs in power positions. Now we have the same in current times. What's wrong with us? I don't know if it's wrong with us. I think the concentration of media ownership by the worst people is part of the problem. But I talk to a lot of people, and yes, I may be talking to just people in my own silo. But even outside that, there are a lot of people of goodwill who are good people, but some of them who aren't media savvy. And you've got to remember, people of my generation and a generation or two younger don't have the media training that young people have. They're not digital natives. They weren't taught at school how to recognize bullshit in media the way younger people often are now. And they're susceptible to being influenced by powerful media organizations that know very well how to trigger people into moving in a conservative direction. There are a lot of people like that. Me, I'm naturally cynical. Somebody tries to boss me around. I've got lived experience in my childhood that that's not a good thing. But there are a lot of people who are susceptible to that, even though in their heart they're good people. There are people who are encouraging and monetizing the worst instincts of people my age and somewhat younger and also somewhat older. Yeah, Steve says, and those that don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Yeah. I also worship a wealth. Yeah. D. says, awesome Wells, Jean Renoir, Buster Keaton, Fritz Lang, Agnes Varda, Stanley Kubrick, all directors with real intelligence, not artificial. Yeah. If you believe people with wealth also deserve it, you're bound to go astray following. Yes, Steve. And that is a cultural thing in North America and here a little bit. If you're rich, then you must have virtue. No, you're just rich. Deb says, this is why it pays to be eclectic in our media consumption. There's so many brilliant, entertaining, and thought-provoking things available if we put our preconceptions aside. Yeah. Steve says the trouble is traditional media have abandoned truth in favor of profit, in the US especially. Yeah. And the thing is that younger people don't watch linear television anymore. They're really drifting away from that enormously, particularly here in Australia. Yeah, they will watch YouTube, which is good for me. And they will watch Threads, and they will watch TikTok. That TikTok is so facile. I don't think there's a lot of depth on TikTok, though. I have seen some TikToks which are really good at explaining political situations briefly, but they don't watch linear media. And the old school linear media companies, which are owned by very wealthy people like Kerry Stokes here in Australia, and the Murdochs, and to a certain extent, people like Gina Reinhardt, don't try to work around that by dipping into new media, and they're not doing it very well. I mean, Pauline Hanson has her own version of South Park that she's doing, and she's the worst of our politicians at the moment. And it's about as funny as a positive biopsy, but people who enjoy hating like it a lot. Yes, Steve, Murdoch poisoned the US media too. Still is Fox is a plague on the US, yeah. But I'm not sure how many young people are watching Fox. I think at some stage, Fox's influence is diminished by the fact that the people who watch it are flatlining. I don't know any programs on Fox News or even what used to be Sky News here, which is owned by Murdoch, are geared towards younger people. I don't think they are at all. I think they're trying to squeeze the last juice out of an old conservative base. And that's kind of interesting. And the sooner the better. The sooner their influence diminishes, the better. And I've said it before, but if you haven't seen Agnes Varda's Cleo from 5 to 7, you should watch that movie. It is just so fucking good. What I want to get is, I can't afford it at the moment, but I want to get a copy of Orson Welles' Confidential Report, because I remember watching a version of it back in the day, and Criterion have put out one that's a little expensive, but I do want to get a copy of Confidential Report. I'm really glad that Netflix put out The Other Side of the Wind, Orson Welles' last film, but it hasn't got a physical media release, which is pissing me off. But if the Criterion channel or Criterion ever does a physical media release of The Other Side of the Wind, I'm going to buy day one regardless of price. Steve says, surprised you'd never heard of King Hu before. I need to watch more of his stuff. I think it wasn't available here in Australia, King Hu's movies. And when Imprint went full bore on King Hu stuff and all of the Golden Princess releases, that's when a lot of us became aware of it. Yeah, we knew John Woo, we knew all the other Hong Kong action directors, but King Hu, there was no distribution for it here in Australia, so we didn't understand it because we didn't see it. Steve says, also need to get that set when I can afford it. Yeah, it's a great set. And it's well curated as well. The book, I've read the essays in the book now. The book is good. All of the movies are fantastically good. And the storytelling is on point, but most of all, the blocking and the cinematography is just so luscious to watch. And the way King Hu uses landscapes and uses framing is a joy to watch. Mr. Alan Olson says they showed Come Drink With Me at the local art museum. I think they showed some King Hu movies here at ACME, the Australian Centre for the Moving Image. And I know a couple of people went and saw it and enjoyed it. It may have been done in collaboration with Imprint. But it was well received. That's part of the joy here. Yeah, I'm incredibly privileged and fortunate that they send me this stuff, but I'm incredibly glad they do because I get to find out about these movies and these directors and these genres that I wasn't previously aware of. Steve says, do you have Vinegar Syndrome's Reviver series over there? Really interesting saving of old films. 3 and all shorts. No, Vinegar Syndrome is incredibly expensive here, Steve. So we don't. Deb says, by the way, I'm broke again. I've ordered volume 2 of the Pal and Pressburger box set. Really want to get the King Who films. Save up, and when you can, definitely get them there. But yeah, the Pal and Pressburger box, the second one's got Red Shoes in it, and I Know Where I'm Going, and all of those really groovy Pal and Pressburger box sets. Friday says, I was watching a YouTube short about someone doing research on old extreme right-wing magazines in the 60s and 80s. Sorry, 70s and 80s. And the neo-Nazis described Murdoch back then as a Marxist, not the brightest. Murdoch was never a Marxist. Steve says, number 2 is really good horror science fiction type films from the Philippines that never got released. Cool. Peter says, I do own a copy of Confidential Report. Mine's on any DVD. Shouldn't be hard to find. I will look around. Dog's Dad's got to go. Okay, thanks a lot, Dog's Dad. Appreciate you being part of this. Snag the 3 Reviver sets from the US if you can, says Steve. I've added to the list. Let's see. Where's my pen? Where's my special pen? Here it is. Got it. Apparently the right-wing nutjobs decided that Murdoch was Jewish. He's not. He's just bald. Yeah, so bad people in the world messing things up. And they're messing up our media. Yeah, it's bad that they're messing up other things, but they're messing up media as well. But yeah, just so much good stuff coming out at the moment. And one of the things about this time of year is, yeah, you get all the big tentpole movies, which I like. I'm a fan of those. I will go and see them and have a good time with some of them. But they're also doing announcements about things. They're kind of revealing the stuff that's coming out at the end of the year. And I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff. It's like those things when you go to Costco and they offer you tasting samples of things. That's what those trailers are to me. Steve says, the super rich are in no way helpful to the world right now. They never have been. Mr. Alan Olsen says, I consider myself a Marxist, just follow Groucho, not Karl. You can follow both, Alan, if you want to. I think being a socialist in America is a bold move at the moment, but there are some politicians that are really making it attractive. Steve says, anything good they might be doing in space can be done by NASA, funded with their wealth. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Elon Musk just pranged a part of a rocket into the moon and made a divot. And I think it should be like golf. If you make a divot in the moon with something you send up into space, you're obliged to go there and smooth out the divot. I think that's only fair. Making a new crater in the moon the size of a large house and yard is not good. And all of those bloody Skylink satellites that keep getting set up and then crashing back to Earth. And then they send up more. There's like 300 Starlink satellites up at the moment. Yeah, Steve, you're right. Musk must now restore the moon surface. Forsyth says, good thing the moon wasn't knocked out of orbit. Yeah, not until we have a space base there and Martin Landau can take them off into space. Adam says, Musk is a divot. No, Musk is a good, bad example of how to be a human being. Just like Trump is, just like Ellison is, just like so many of them are. They're the best examples of not being a good person. And I mean, these people have been studied for centuries. Musk and Trump and Ellison will be studied by people in the future to see how not to be as a human being and to see the path of straying, if they were ever on the track of being a good human being. And if you look at the history of Musk and Trump in particular, it's because their parents were assholes as well, which is not an excuse. One of my parents was an incredible asshole, an incredibly murderous asshole, and I've not chosen that path. But it's interesting to see where these people came from, even while you feel icky while you're looking at it. Steve says, Muskrat is polluting space with his Starlink stuff. Soon his junk will be harming legit spacecraft. Yeah. Friday says, Norman Spinrad's The Iron Dream was the American Nazi Party's recommended reading list. They're not very smart, are they? Spinrad's still alive. He's living in Paris, near the Seine. I took a look at his place on Google Maps. Yeah, he's not well, but he's living in Paris with a view of the Seine, which is not a bad thing. So he says, yeah, just like Hitler, Stalin, etc. It's bad examples, yeah. My phone keeps sending me notifications. My watch does. But yeah, what's the best portrait of evil in film? I mean, you can go to a lot of things like Happiness. Todd Solondz's Happiness is a good example of that. Imprint is sending me a copy of Downfall, the movie with Bruno Gans playing Hitler. No spoilers, but I'm going to be reviewing that one. So there's a good example. There are just so many of them. I mean, There Will Be Blood's another one. People just don't take the warnings of films, do they? They really should more. Elon Musk and Larry Ellison in Iron Man 2, good example there. But The Vanishing, says Adam, yeah. But there are a lot of For instance, Bruno was such a great actor. I've really got to find a copy of Wings of Desire as well. Forsar says, Triumph of the Will is a good example of evil. It is. Though getting that close to it with the documentary is horrible. And yeah, I don't know whether this is true or not, but if you can believe one impossible thing, like for me, religion, I find none of that plausible, then it's quite easy for you to believe an impossible thing or a nasty thing. If somebody says it's divinely inspired, I think there's a back door put into a human brain when you believe things that aren't fact-based, that enables other things that aren't fact-based to make it, to get into your head easier. It's just a feeling I got. Adam says, The House of Jack, but I can't rewatch that one. Is Gowans in that? I'm not sure. Alan says, is Wings of Desire on Criterion? I think it is. But I do want to rewatch Wings of Desire. But I think it's one of those movies that's got supernatural, superstitious aspect to it, but it's very grounded and human as well. Friday says, Wings of Desire is on 4K. Cool. Can you running those again? Aren't you glad you heard that? But that's the way it is with live stream. Yeah, I'm going to have to be very careful about how I review Downfall, because I'm not sure whether the cover has a swastika on it or not. And here in Australia, it's illegal to show swastikas for 90-year-old reasons, and I think they're valid reasons. So I'm going to have to be careful about how I review that one. D. Lee says, Norman Spinrad also wrote a book in 1967 called Agent of Chaos, which features a main character named Boris Johnson. Whatever happened to that guy? Yeah, he's in the garbage bin of history, isn't he? So I've just got to think here a sniff, which dries up my sinus. Because when I talk for 2 hours at a time, my throat starts getting rough and my sinuses start acting up. So I do apologize for that. What are people going to be watching this week? I've got a couple of things I want to watch this week, but what have people been watching? Friday says, have the 4K Wings of Desire as my favorite movie of all time, even though it's more a poem than a film. It can be both. What am I going to watch this week? I'm going to watch Leviticus, an Australian horror movie from this year, which I haven't seen yet. I'm going to see Tuna from last year, which is a caper film. I'm going to see the animation version of All You Need Is Kill. And what else am I watching? I've got a list here. Don't need to see that I've already watched it. And Kraken, the Norwegian film this year. I'm going to watch that as well. Steve says, I've occasionally put analogs of bad people in my books to have them eaten by sharks or crushed by statues or something. I was once a character in a book. My friend Lucy Sussex wrote a novel. And I'd written, this is back before full-on internet, I'd written a fanzine article because I was looking at some adult material in a Usenet group. And somebody put some child abuse material in there, labeled as something else. And it brought up an image that I don't want to think about. And it instantly nauseated me. I had an instant visceral reaction to this image. This was back in the 90s. And so I wrote a fanzine article about that experience. And it was something that my friend Lucy needed for a character in her novel. And so she put it into the novel. So I've been a character in a novel too. But in a positive sense, I hope. Steve is hoping to watch the rest of the DEFA Blu Ray set, Elamia, Dust in the Stars. You'll have fun with that, Steve, I think. Also might like to watch Planet of Burr again after that, though I don't think I have the HD Blue for that. Peter's seeing Soylent Green and Logan's Run at the Palace here in Adelaide tonight. Can't wait. I actually had dinner with Harry Harrison, who wrote the novel upon which Soylent Green was based. Him and his wife Joan were lovely. This was back in the 80s in Sydney. Dodge Morgan just watched Murder by Decree, a Sherlock Holmes film I hadn't seen. Holmes meets Jack the Ripper for a second time. Murder by Decree is great. The moral compass that Christopher Plummer's Holmes shows is a totally different viewpoint on Holmes than anything at the stage had. Steve says, I used to put personal enemies into books to off them, but then I decided I didn't want future historians to dig up those folks. I only put my friends in now. Public figures are fair game. No, they are. Deb says, I want to watch The Return. I saw the TV Glow this week. Good choices, both of which are really interesting. Though to give you a warning, to give you a heads up, Deb, you do get to see Ray Fiennes' cock in The Return. Friday says, I lost my old copy and got another one of Agent of Chaos. In the intervening decades, I forgot he was called Boris Johnson. I cracked up. In the book, he's an idiot who promotes democracy but doesn't know what it is. Yeah. Dodge Morgan's going to see the new Spider-Man in 3D IMAX. Nice. Mr. Alan Olsen says, I'm watching this on two screens. There's a 4-second delay between the two screens. I have that too when I'm watching the disconnected Ryan Verrill's live streams. I'm watching it on the TV over here, but I'm commenting on the computer. And there can be that discrepancy between the two feeds. Peter says, I also finished 13 seasons of Red Dwarf. Sal loves Red Dwarf. Steve says, hope to see Spider-Man this week in theatre. Good. Tim says, regarding Ray fines, is that a problem because? No, I was just warning you. You either virtualize or anticipate. Either one will work. So he says, yeah, if I watch on TV and comment on computer, there's always some kind of lag on one or the other. It's just the nature of the medium. And what I tend to do is have the audio coming out of the TV and have the feed on the computer muted so that I can get things going. Franny says, lager is the only thing that can kill a curry. Lager is the only thing that can kill a curry. Why would you want to kill a curry? One thing I am doing, Franny, is I'm getting addicted to English-style curry sauce on chips, because you can get it in a can and then you heat it up on the stove and mix it all up with the water, and it comes out as a nice thick curry sauce. I really like curry sauce. Adam says, Fines is a very short but muscular man. He lives locally. Cool. But I recommend The Return. I think it's a good film. It's a good adaptation. Steve says, looking forward to it. I'll review it, what's inside month-long chunks. Cool. Curry sauce on chips is a Midland delicacy, says Franny. Must be my Yorkshire ancestry hitting me. But I do like curry sauce on chips. And Aldi does some really nice chips that aren't processed too much. Big, long ones made out of real potatoes. So I'll whack those in the air fryer and then cook up some curry sauce. Deb says, I always expect nothing but usually end up pleasantly surprised. Let me know what you think of Rafe Fiennes when you watch the movie, Deb. Franny says, also orange chips battered. No, don't think I could go there, Franny. What part of Yorkshire? I'm from Halifax. My grandparents were from York, and they emigrated in 1930. Steve Sullivan says, local place has curry on chips as an Irish thing. Works for this part of Irishman. Yeah, you can get Irish spice bag spices here, which you can make an Irish spice bag, which is yummy as hell, because I've had one. But I found out that orange, thanks, Deb, you messaged me your thoughts. But the Irish spice bag spices, I actually use them as a dry marinade on a steak. And shit, it was good. I just did a cheap piece of steak I got and put the Irish spice bag spices on it. And it worked, because I had a bit left over after I'd used it on chips. Thought I'd give it a go on steak. Just worked. Adam Schofield says, Spike Milligan did quite a racist sitcom called Curry and Chips. Yeah, that was back in the day when brownface was very big. Peter Sellers did a lot of that shit as well. That's why I can't watch movies like The Party anymore. Peter Sellers playing, The Millionaires. Peter Sellers playing Indian characters. Fuck that, you're a good character actor. Do your own stuff. Cult of Jay says, what's Ray Fiennes, the actor who's starred in Cronenberg's film Spider? Yeah, it is. That's Fiennes. See, so Fandango had 5 for $10 Western films yesterday. Probably watch a few of those. Got a chunk of Audie Murphy Westerns, among others. Yeah, Viavision put out a lot of Audie Murphy Westerns, and I got a lot of them really cheaply. And they turn up in thrift stores now. Occasionally dip in there and there's a whole bunch of Audie Murphy Westerns I don't have. Deb says, I love any kind of chili sauce or paste on chips on toast. What I tend to do is I tend to do Cholula hot sauce on chips. That works well too. And Cholula I can get from Aldi these days. But that works. Just a little bit. Because I'm cutting down on salt, I don't put salt on chips anymore. I put spice on them. So I will put a curry sauce or I will put Cholula hot sauce on chips, and it works. Adam says, Peter Sellers, trouble men unpleasant. How am I watching actors with an unsavory background? I tend to cherry pick a bit. I won't watch Johnny Depp. It was really weird because I was having dinner with Sal's sister and brother-in-law and niece. We were talking about favourite actors, and she said her favourite actor was Johnny Depp. And I kind of went, okay. I got in trouble for going, okay. But, yeah, there are a lot of problematic people there. I'm the only person I know that's actually met Kevin Spacey. Steve says, I like all these westerns, good use of his skills, lesser exploitation in the war films. Yeah, the war films with him and Neville Brand, both of whom were incredibly decorated during World War II. They're uncomfortable. For Sales almost finished watching all 7 seasons of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. 268 episodes and time well spent. Cool. Chili salt on chips, says Friday. I haven't tried that. I'm not sure we've got it here. Artistic talent does not always equal good person. Yeah. I mean, people like George C. Scott I won't watch because I read Ava Gardner's biography and he beat the fuck out of her when they were making the Bible, oddly enough. And they had to delay shooting until her face swelling went down. That's a line I would cross with watching people. Yes, if he's a minor character in other movies, I'll watch it. But George C. Scott, I won't watch because that's too close to the bone for me. And, of course, Spacey, I haven't watched. Yeah, it goes the other way too, where when Anthony Bourdain ended himself, it was such a raw thing for me. I haven't been able to watch Bourdain's series since then because it's raw and painful. Forsyth says, George C. Scott always impressed me as a nasty man. Yeah. Steve says, it's nice that Alan Richardson is a proud lefty as well as Jack Reacher, Hawke, etc. Yeah, I like Reacher and I like Alan Richardson as well. And he is a lefty and he's unashamed in that. Adam says, Kirk Douglas. There are Kirk Douglas movies I like, but I'm aware of who he was and what he did. Things like 2 Weeks in Another Town and The Bad and the Beautiful I like. They're among my favourite movies because the movie's about Hollywood. So there's that. Yeah, it's a very hard one. And I've got a friend, Grant Watson, who won't watch a Roman Polanski movie until Polanski dies. And maybe that's the line we should draw. Let me know if you disagree. Unless it's something very, very close to the bone for you. Like, I can watch a Kirk Douglas movie, he's dead now. But I can't do that with George C. Scott because that is close to my lived experience. And so it hits me differently. Friday says, I'm finding it hard to watch Kubrick after hearing about The Shining. Yeah, I can understand that. Shelley Duvall did not deserve that. And you've got to remember, too, that making a movie is a workplace. And there are workplace obligations that people have in workplaces. Peter says, separating the art from the artist is something we have to do sometimes. I love Neil Gaiman stuff, Caroline Sandman, but now I have to put these away. I got drunk with him in Tasmania once in Hobart at Hadley's Hotel. Back before anybody knew. This would have been about 95. Steve says, there are certain actors, directors that have lives not supported by the politics, which is always unsettling. Yeah. Forsale says, Knife in the Water was a great movie. It was. So was Chinatown. Shelley Duvall gives the best performance in The Shining. Yeah, but she was tortured to give that. If you believe a lot of stories coming out of Hollywood about past and present, a lot of stars are not very nice. Yeah, but what amazes me are people you don't think are going to be very nice often are. There are people about whom you only hear incredible things. And getting back to Star Trek, Anson Mount is doing lots of lefty stuff on Twitter and not giving a shit that people dislike it. And he is putting his flag on the mast, saying that there are things going on that are hurting a lot of people and that he hates them. I think one of the things social media is doing, and yes, it is a double-edged sword, it's revealing in some cases the best of people, in some cases the worst of people. And if somebody pretends to be a good person but they're not, at some stage social media will reveal their true nature. Adam says, by some accounts, Gene Hackman was very difficult to work with, but I feel as a ploy he often played bastards. There was something interesting. I'm not sure who said it. No, I'm sorry, I don't know the woman who said it. But there was an actress, quite a prominent actress, and I forget who said it. But she said, women don't go method acting in movies. They don't stay in the character all the way through the film. Because women have other obligations. They've got to look after family. They've got relationships to do. They've got kids to look after. They've got a life outside the job they're doing. And so they can't take a nasty bastard home with them. They don't do method acting in movies because they can't retain that while they're doing the film. And I find that really interesting, that method acting is a male indulgence in cinema and probably on stage. But method acting is a male indulgence. And that's changed the way I've seen a lot of things. Deb says, yeah, I met Gaiman a number of times, heard the stories, wonder why it's just tall poppy syndrome, but apparently it's horribly true. Yeah, he always gave off a strange vibe. In the same way, when I went to a press conference in 98 and met Kevin Spacey at a very small press conference for Albino Alligator, a movie he directed, the vibe wasn't just celebrity vibe. My spidey sense tingled with both Gaiman and with Kevin Spacey. D. Lee says, there are a lot of great Weimar German films that you never watch again because they had actors or crew who later collaborated with the Nazis. Still great films. Yeah, who was it? Yeah, Conrad Veidt was in so many films as anti-Nazi, sent a lot of his salary to anti-Nazi causes. He did. Conrad Veidt was it Veidt or White? Conrad was one of the good guys. Just trying to remember. Give me a second. Emil Jannings, first guy to win a Best Actor Oscar in history at the Oscars, went on to become a Nazi. That's a character arc. And then he got part of denazification. He didn't get any roles after 1945 in acting because he lent into the evil. And yet he was the first man to ever win a Best Actor Oscar. And nobody talks about that because the Oscars want to whitewash their reputation. Steve says, the US shows right now how a lot of people can slip into evil without even knowing it. Yeah. Dodge Morgan says, I loved a lot of Spencer Tracy movies. I think it made me think twice when I enjoyed watching Bad Day at Black Rock. Tarnished my enjoyment somewhat. Yeah, he was an alcoholic and he may have been closeted. I'm not sure whether he was or not, but the rumor is that he was. But I think Bad Day at Black Rock's an important movie for that reason. Yeah, the guerrillas have taken over this town, that kind of stuff. Alan says, Fritz Lang was pretty nasty, yeah. Friday says, the method is used by bad people to justify their badness. It was the original story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. In the book, Jekyll wanted to do bad things, become Hyde allows him to do so. Guy who led the bombing of Pearl Harbor later became a peace activist. People can change for the better, yeah. But some people don't. Deb says, I rewatched Baby Driver a few months ago because it's such a good movie. But both my partner and I balked at Spacey. I can't watch Polanski anymore. Maybe when he's dead, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are things like during World War II, it brought out the best in so many people. Noel Coward spent almost a year traveling around Pacific Islands, entertaining troops near the front lines during World War II. And he dragged Marlene Dietrich along with him. Him and Marlene did shows all across the Pacific Ocean, often putting themselves in peril during World War II. There are a lot of stories like that about people where they put their asses on the line to try to help save civilization in a way that they could, given their talents. Steve says, people can change for the worse too, but I always hope for redemption. Yeah. This Happy Breed is my favorite Noel Coward film, says Adam. Yeah, it's like Maya Angelou said, when people tell you who they are, believe them. If they show you that they're a good person, believe them, because they very often are. But when they show you they're not, believe them as well. I mean, I had so many arguments on a film collecting group when somebody said, "Oh, I'm really looking forward to getting Michael on Blu Ray," and I said, "I'll pass on that. I don't like movies where kiddie fiddlers are being whitewashed." And there's so many people that got personally abusive with me about that. And I just replied to them and I said, you've really got to question why you're personally attacking someone about a person like that. And I wasn't personally attacking this person. I just said, I'll pass on this because I don't like pedophile whitewashing. But there are all these guys, and they're all guys, who really got personally abusive with me. Go, oh, he was never convicted. Yeah, neither was Hitler. Neither was Jimmy Savile. But all of these people who automatically defend someone because they like their entertainment, I find oddly scary. Deb says, I've only been able to watch Klaus Kinski since he died. Nasty piece of work, yeah. Steve says, I do think that a lot of current US politicians and rich folks will be on redemption, though. Yeah, absolutely. There's no redemption arc for many of them, and I've named them before on this video. There just is no redemption arc for those people. Friday says, our best politician at the moment is Count Binface. Count Binface is fun. I think satire and politics are just such good bedfellows. Dodge Morgan says, Spencer Tracy allegedly stalked and harassed a famous singing actress, not in Kansas anymore. Okay. Didn't know that. But yeah, it's one of those things where everyone's going to draw the line differently with certain actors, actresses, singers, entertainers, politicians, all that stuff. And I think it's a hard one. And having all that information about people makes it even harder. But in doing so, we can also question where our morals are and where our morals stay and what we can tolerate in order to be entertained. It's a question we should ask ourselves a lot. Where is my line? Where's my moral line? And why won't I cross it? And when will I cross it? I think if you don't make that analysis, it's very easy to just go, oh, I'm separating the artist from the art. I don't think I believe in that. I think it's something that, because of my past history and my life, I have a lot more trouble than a lot of other people do with that. Yeah, it's really hard to know the truth. And yeah, our morals have advanced. I'm glad that they have, but the thing is that there are people trying to draw things back to all these people going, "Oh, we've got to go back to the past where things were better." I lived in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. They weren't. They definitely weren't. And we should remember that. But guess what? Yeah, Deb's got to go. We really must knock that naughty clock that says it's time to go. It goes so fast. Our time has passed and we must end our show. Thanks to everybody. It's been a lovely live stream. We've had a lot of wide-ranging talk. We've even talked about movies. How about that? But thanks a lot for being a part of it. All the usual things. Give this a thumbs up, like, subscribe, become a channel member, become a YouTube supporter, become a patron. Look after yourselves, and I'll catch you in 2 weeks on another live stream.